it really is, in addition to the great writing and the great way that the book was structured and the unusual character portrait, is that it was a way to talk about things that I think are universal. This need for a connection with an other, someone outside of ourselves, the need to love and be loved. That it was a movie about that, but it told it in a very kind of extreme and unusual way, basically through necrophilia. And so, as a filmmaker, I thought that was, those were all the reasons I wanted to make movies. Make something new, but something that people can relate to.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very singular film. I think it's probably the cinema's greatest portrait of necrophilia ever.
Thank you.
You're welcome. To what extent did the book, did you subtract or add things to the book? I'm not familiar with the book. I'm guessing it's not a very long novel. But were there things that you expanded upon, or was it more a case of subtraction?
The approach here, I've adapted a few books now. I did one from Faulkner, As I Lay Dying, and I used poetry, Hart Crane's poetry for a film. So I've done it a few times now, and there's always a question of how loyal you'll be to the source, and then in what ways will you be loyal. So our approach was, yes, we will, we love the book, and we want to translate it to the screen in as honorable ways, or honor the source as much as we can. So everything, almost every scene in the movie you can find in the book. As far as the, except for the scene where Lester shoots the stuffed animals. That is not in the stuffed animals are in the book, but he doesn't have his kind of breakdown moment in where he shoots them. And I love that. That's one of my favorite scenes, and it really just came out of the fact that we were there shooting, and it was a movie that had a lone protagonist. And so these stuffed animals that he talks to really kind of took on roles in the film, and and we get coverage of them as if they were, live characters. And so during the filming, I just felt like, wow, we need closure with these characters, and also it would be a great way to show Lester, coming unhinged, and it's a way that he could kind of externalize a lot of his feelings with that scene. So that was the main scene that is not in the book. Otherwise, we stayed pretty close to it. We did. There's more at the end of the book. There's a bit of an epilogue that talks about Lester's fate, but essentially that we shot, but I lopped it off because essentially it seemed to me that it was what the epilogue in the book was doing was telling or relating one of Cormac McCarthy's main themes, which is this kind of recurrence of violence, or just that violence, there's something inherently violent about humans, and so he will layer his books with violence, but also traces of violence throughout history. And so the ending of the book talked about Lester going to an institution and then meeting another man who did even crazier things and ate people's brains with a spoon. And so it was, to me, it was a way of saying, well, all right, you just heard this story of this one guy, but then it doesn't end with him. It's been going on, and other people, it happens all over, and maybe will continue to happen. And so I guess I thought it was a cleaner and more kind of poetic ending to just have Lester kind of disappear into the wilderness, and it would kind of tell the same idea that, you know, he's gone through all this, and he's still, his spirit is still out there.
Just one more question before I take questions from the press. This is a film that's a real kind of tour de force for Scott Hayes, the actor who plays Lester. And I'm curious as to how you work together in terms of developing the performance. Did the book serve as a kind of instruction manual for the performance to some degree? And how did you work with him to develop his diction, his physicality? I mean, it's a really extraordinary performance that has qualities of kind of a child, but also qualities of an animal, ultimately. And I'm just interested in how you worked with Scott Walker to develop this.
Scott Hayes, yeah.
Scott Walker is a singer. Scott Hayes.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I completely agree with you, and I would say that I'm well aware that it's, you know, a movie with disturbing subject matter that is not for everyone, but I think one thing, I don't think anyone that has eyes can deny is that Scott gives an incredible performance, and so I'm very proud that that exists. And I've known Scott for over 10 years. He's a friend of a friend. The actor Jim Parrick from True Blood is Scott Hayes' childhood friend, and so I met Scott, and over those 10 years, I saw Scott go through some very dark personal things in his life, and he was kind of the friend that I didn't really want to spend much time with for a long time. He was just kind of crazy, and then he kind of came through all that and became a better man on the other side, and so when I finally got the rights to the book, I saw that Scott was a dependable kind of person, and so I thought I could have the best of both worlds. He could draw on his dark personal experiences as an actor, but as a director, I could, you know, depend on him to be a, you know, professional and not be a liability trying to make the movie, but, you know, would be an ally making this movie. And it was also, I also knew that it was a role, I mean, it was a role that I could, when I first read the book, I imagined maybe Sam Rockwell in the role, or Michael Shannon has become a good friend of mine, but I guess I already cast Michael Shannon in a necrophilia role for a short film at NYU called Herbert White. But I thought, well, let's cast somebody that people don't know. You know, not that, you know, anyone will think, oh, it's really like a mountain man he found or something, but it'll just help the suspension of disbelief even more if it's just like, wow, who is this guy? And is he really like that? You know, and then I knew that if I put Scott in this role, you know, he was at a place in his career where, you know, you see this with a lot of actors. There's like the one role where they just go for it, you know, like they just go to extremes to prepare. And I knew that Scott was ready to do that. And so he, as soon as I cast him, he went to Tennessee. We didn't ultimately shoot in Tennessee, but the story takes place in Sevier County, Tennessee, where I guess McCarthy lived for a while. And so Scott went out there and isolated himself for 3 months before we shot. He met, his friend actually ended up being the historian of Sevier County, so I guess he met, you know, the locals and moonshiners and learned how to operate that rifle and really worked on, you know, the accent and actually, I guess, I wasn't with him, but I guess he stayed overnight in actual caves on his own. And